Okay, so with that,
When do we get to flame TSM, man? That's all I'm waiting for.
All right, let's bring it on. That's what I was going to say before we close things out.
How
Can we not touch on the multi-million-dollar disaster that is TSM right now? TSM currently sitting 1-2. We touched on them a little bit in their game of the week. There it is. A lot of money, not a lot of wins. They all step on a blast cone and go different directions. Please watch that moment from CLG versus TSM. It was hilarious until CLG threw it. Thoughts here on TSM's mess. How do you fix it? Where do you start? And we'll start with you, LS.
I mean, I'll just read my tweets that I made. We can't pull them up. I mean, I feel like this is my eulogy here, okay? But I need to give here. So I ended up tweeting yesterday. I said TSM are quite literally a bottom tier team at the minute, and there's no easy fixing it, especially not with the 5 weeks left, because you're playing 3 game days, and then you probably have 3 scrim days, right? So there's just not a lot of time left to fix this, and I think that's a lot of added pressure. Their laning phases, overall individual gameplay ideas, player by player, drafting are all insanely bad, and TSM has some of the worst drafts ever. But this is several times now that they got away with stealing the Mona Lisa. And obviously I'm referring to in the lock-in tournament, they were destined to lose in 2 of those games, and they got away with murder. It was, I don't know, it's like OJ Simpson or something. I mean, TSM really just, I don't know what's going on, but they've consistently been in a losing position game states for a long time. It reminds me of summer where they also committed robberies, mostly on the back of Bjergsen to win games, which is what they did with their Cinderella stories. And the reason that I'm doubtful that they can improve is because how can they realistically? Intent's absent in their gameplay. I mentioned this earlier on, that intent is where you would see coaching or other things take effect. Even if you see mechanical execution blunder, or you see them botch something, right, on like a mechanical level or like a very small micro macro type thing with coordination between one another inside of a team fight, that's not there either. There's no fucking intent. So everything's totally clueless. And the reason that I'm also not optimistic that anything can change is because that I perceive it that Bjergsen was always the coach anyway. But it's also unfair to blame him because he's put into an impossible position. He's put with a roster that isn't, I mean, some people will say that it's strong. I don't think that it's as strong as some of the other rosters in LCS. But then on top of that, he never had anyone to really help him. So he just moves over into a different titled position. And the big question there, or the big ask is, what type of stuff can he do now that he's not allocating a lot of time towards playing the game and can instead just allocate it towards coaching the game, right? But it's coming off of something that's almost an experience because he never had anything to learn off of, right? He himself was his best teacher coach. From everything that we know, right? Yeah, he was his own best coach. And I mentioned in closing that he was NA's far and away best player for so long, carried so many iterations of the team on his back through sheer power of his gameplay and finding ways to win where they didn't belong. But now he's absent in the actual game, but the fundamental problems that have plagued the team for years continues to remain. And then when we get tidbits from like Double Lift Stream and these other things, it almost seems like they're absent-minded in the sense that like Double Lift will comment that Bjerg historically had a lot of say in draft, right? But Summer Split, they had some really bad drafts. Like, do you remember the
they would draft the 3
AP,
losing lanes.
The 3 losing lanes, or like the all AP almost team compositions and like other stuff that was just really out there. But then the other thing about the drafts is, and I think a lot of people don't understand when I make these comments, you can end up with a winning draft or a losing draft, but there's also the phase in which it occurs that speaks volumes to what the hell are you doing? Was it TSM that did the R4 Leona? When you're always when you're always just counterpitting support. Right. You should just pick mid because the enemy team has already shown their hand, and there is no mid lane. There's no mid laner that can come in on R5 that is somehow influenced by B4, B5 enemy bot lane. But the enemy bot lane still has to come in. There's no mid laner currently in the meta that can account for a range of champions that magically comes in bot lane and somehow influences the draft.
Was that the R5 Corki?
That was the Corki. There's no mid laner that accounts for like the range merging that the enemy team could come up with. And so that's a super weird thing. But then also, what is the fetish with Leona, man? It's almost like
isn't that a
weird
sword
at
art
this
champion
point.
though? That's like a sword art
it's
specialty.
It's absolutely a sword art champion.
Yeah. I think he's probably just falling back on that. He's seeing like, okay, like I'm probably the best player on this team. I will sacrifice to, and I can do anything on the Leona, right? Like I think that has to be part of the conversation here, right?
So I mean, where I would like to jump in is like, where do you attack this to fix it? And I feel like the easiest way to fix it is to just like change the team mentality with drafting. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen 11.4, 11.5 once jungle nerfs come in, but it's very clear going around the world that the best way to succeed right now is drafting around your jungler. So the biggest mistake that I see TSM consistently make is like in their first 3, they draft a jungler that needs setup. They draft a Talia, a Nidalee, something like that. And they pair that with things that make the game unplayable, right? So I think a good way to compare this is look at 100 Thieves drafts when they have closer. And I think that Spica is a completely capable player mechanically to play every pick you need in a carry jungle meta. I don't think that's the issue at all. Yeah. So when you see 100 Thieves, right? They first pick Talia. What are their next 2 picks? They grab Set, which is flex mid support, and they grab Renekton. 2 champions that can set him up. And they end up putting Set mid, Renekton top, both with the Talia. So there's constant threat that you can gank those lanes, that you can pressure those lanes. You look at how Spica has to play Talia. They're like, all right, you got your Talia, Spica. What's your mid laner? Corki. What the fuck? Corki doesn't exist until 20 minutes, right? Corki doesn't exist until 20 minutes. So why are you drafting those types of picks with a Talia? Like, if you don't want to play Talia, then ban that in the draft, and you can play things that are much more focused on full clearing, and you can back them with picks that support that. Sure, you had just to finish my point, like if you're gonna draft like an Orianna like every game for PoE, sure, that's fine. Then you need to be banning Talia instead of like Udyr Olaf, and then you opt into the Udyr Olaf matchup with an Orianna supporting that pick. It feels like their soul lane picks and their jungle picks are completely like independent of each other. But yeah, go for it.
The other thing is like the tidbits that we get from like Double Lift Stream, right? A lot of like the conversation, it ends up climaxing at what is currently perceived as like the best, or talking about like what could be better in the moment, right? In like present day, modern day. There's very little language that talks about future or change. But realistically, at any given point, the meta is not what the meta is. It's whatever counters the meta. That in and of itself is absent globally. That has nothing to do with just NA as like a region, right? That's just a concept that supersedes any regional league right now. But then in addition to that, I'm beginning to wonder if maybe TSM's drafts are dwarfed by the fact that they were always just so good that they actually don't realize maybe how bad some of the stuff really was. Do you know what I mean? Like if you just keep winning, you can't really
you're creating those bad habits and you don't know what the meta is.
Worlds was a huge reality check, right? Like that's when they started drafting. They're like, okay, we're going for the 3-lane no prio comp with Zillion and Nidalee. Like, let's fucking get it. And then just get smacked in lane. Spica has like 7 people invading like his fucking own jungle every single time. So it's like, I don't even know. I feel like that had to have been the reality check.